Hello, and welcome back to the Leash Mind podcast, Mental Health and Dog Training. I'm your host, Mandy Bautel. On today's episode, I want to talk about my personal journey as an entrepreneur that is neurodivergent with PMDD. So, I guess to really explain why I wanted to do an episode on this is just to give you better background and understanding of who's running the podcast, why I chose to do it, how I'm doing it, and how I run my other businesses and manage to not run myself into the ground while still enjoying everything I'm doing with my businesses. So let's let's dig in. Okay, let's go back to how I even got in the dog training industry. That is big part due to my now husband. I met him on a dating site and found out he was a dog walker when I was still a hairstylist. I just was like, this is so cool. This guy gets to hang out with dogs all day and be active all the time and be outside in nature, which is something that I did not get to do when I was in a salon all the time. I hated it. And there was a point where he was looking to hire new walkers on, and I was like, tap me in, dude. Like, I'll work for you. And he was just like, do we really want to do that with our relationship and, add work into it? And I was just like, we work so well together in these situations. I can't see this not working. So I went through the Dog Biz Dog Walking Academy, which is a 4-day intensive course, got my dog walking certification, and the rest is kind of history. I just got into the dog stuff. I got into dog walking. I was a dog walker for about 2 years before no, I was a dog walker for maybe a year, and then I sought out training certifications. So I first went through the Catch Training Academy and became a Catch certified trainer through that program. And then I was like, you know what? I liked that course, but I want to get a little bit more. And I did the Dog Training Internship Academy, which is a program that was created by Janice Bradley, who was one of the founding, I guess, members that helped create the Academy for Dog Trainers with Gene Donaldson. Then Janice went and created her own program. So that's the program I did. So I am a CCT, Catch certified trainer, and a CT, which is a certified trainer and behavior consultant. So I got my Catch training certificate in around 2016 because it was before I got married. And then I got my certificate in training and behavior consult in 2018. So I was a certified trainer for several years while I was still dog walking, but I wanted to kind of have more experience in behavior since I was walking so many dogs at a time. Because in San Francisco, depending on the parks you walk at, you can walk between 6 to 8 dogs at a time legally. So managing that many dogs twice a day, I needed to know something about behavior. So that's kind of how I got into the dog training industry. March 2022, I was officially diagnosed with ADHD when I've had it my whole life. My grandma had ADHD. My mom had ADHD. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. If the mom's a rabbit, usually the kid is a rabbit. So I always had it. I never realized how it manifested until, like, I'm sure a lot of us, 2020 happened, and I was having to look in the mirror and look at my own behavior. So before I get into that whole part of this, I want to explain how I didn't notice I had ADHD when I was a dog walker and a trainer because it was so different. And I never knew. I just was like, I don't know. My brain works a little different. I get very tripped up by little things. That's just me. I can't handle life. Maybe that's what it is. That's where I was when I was a walker and a trainer. I didn't think about ADHD. And when you're a dog walker, what are you doing the whole time? You're moving, you're active, you're outside, you're doing all these things that are keeping your brain engaged, and you're active and you're creative and you're getting the fresh air. You're not sitting at a desk day in and day out having to do admin work. That's like a very small admin work is a very small chunk of being a dog walker. I feel like, I'd come home most days filthy and I loved it. I feel like if my jeans, I came home and I had like, if you're a dog walker, you know what I'm about to say. I would have like a grease like patch on the side of my jeans from wiping treats on my jeans the whole day. And, if I came home and my jeans were filthy, everything was filthy, it was a good day because it just meant that I was really active and I got out and I had fun with my groups, which I always tried to do. So being outside, being active, being in fresh air, engaging, driving, doing all those things, that was helping my ADHD. It was a good job, good career to have for somebody with ADHD because I was constantly outside and active. I wasn't in front of a desk and in my own brain. I was getting out of my head a lot. And I did not realize that that had such an impact until 2020 happened. So at the start of 2020, I had decided to no longer walk dogs. I wanted to go full time into training. I wanted to lean into it big time. Wolf culture had been around for a year by then. So I was kind of just wanting to, phase out of dog walking after doing it for like 5 years. It was exhausting. And I just wanted to do training in wolf culture. That's what I was wanting to do. And I was doing that from January until March. And then March happened and it was just like, whoa, what do we do? We were living in San Francisco when the pandemic happened. And, if you're from San Francisco or the Bay Area, rent is crazy expensive. And if we weren't going to train anymore and we weren't dog walking and people didn't need dog walking and the city was shut down, it was crazy in San Francisco, as I'm sure it was everywhere. But for us, it was just crazy to like, just life went from this to nothing. And it was so hard because we were just busy, active, doing things all the time. My husband has ADHD as well. And he didn't even acknowledge that, like, he had a great career that, like, helped manage his ADHD for years until 2020 happened. And we were just like, shit, what do we do? Okay, so 2020 happened. What the hell did we do? I think it's just because Josh and we've been partners, but we've been business partners just as long as we've been partners. So uh, he's the guy always is quick to think and quick to come up with solutions. And I think that's why I've gotten better at that because I have a partner that does that. Um, but when that happened, we had a serious conversation of, okay, do we want to, this could be our out of training. Do we want to fully go into like what everyone else is going to have to do and go into training full time online, which we could have done if we could have done it. It's just we were burnt out at that point with training and we just were like, maybe this is the sign for us to pivot. And if you know the Boutels, we love a good pivot. And we couldn't, afford to stay in San Francisco anymore. So we had to move up to Southern Oregon, leave everything, just completely drop our lives and move to Southern Oregon and stay with Josh's aunt for about 9 months, his aunt Veronica. So we lived with Veronica for 9 months during the pandemic, which brought us a heck of a lot closer. I think she's the reason that I was even able to acknowledge my mental health and acknowledge what I need to do with my business and how to step back because I felt so lost, as I'm sure so many people did during the pandemic, that I needed help. And I feel so grateful to be related to such a wonderful human. So we had all those life stress things go on in the background. Mind you, we still were not diagnosed with ADHD. It was still very much like, okay, maybe I'm just anxious. Maybe I have anxiety and depression. Everyone is going through this right now. It's the pandemic. And so I just was like, all right, I'm going to focus on wolf culture. I think we finished up our online course. And then by May 2020, I officially announced that I wasn't going to be doing training anymore. I wasn't taking clients anymore. I wrapped up a few online sessions with my clients and that was it. And it was hard to leave that behind. I do still kind of miss training, but I think I just lost any excitement for it when the pandemic happened because I didn't want to do the online thing like other people have done. So many people have done it successfully. I think it just wasn't the route for me. It wasn't the route I was wanting to go down. So being stuck at home with family for that long of a time and, not being where I had been for the last 8 years of my life, completely ripping the rug out from underneath us, starting over, figuring out how to start a new business. It was stressful, but somehow I was able to focus on woof culture and that helped a lot. And I will say that again, I wasn't realizing I had ADHD at the time. I don't know why it never clicked for me. I think it's just because, I was getting served all those cerebral ads all the time. And I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. I just never considered I had ADHD. I just thought that I was overly anxious. I overthought things. I have a lot of childhood trauma that I am working through still. But in 2020, I am a different person from who I was in 2020, let me tell you. Lots of growth, lots of healing, lots of self-reflection, and I think a lot of people have experienced that too. So 2020, somehow, we pulled everything together and we saved and budgeted, and we were able to end 2020 with buying our fixer-upper. It's very much a fixer-upper. Just because I bought a house doesn't mean it's brand new. But I'm so grateful we were able to do that. It's crazy how we pivoted like that. So I think the moral of that story is just if you're thinking about making changes and taking the leap, it doesn't need to be perfect. You just got to figure it out as it goes. So fast forward to 2021, I was just putting all my effort into woof culture and I was only focusing about work, but I still had a hard time focusing on work. So let me lay it out for you this way. Now, my work weeks, I work Tuesday through Saturday, and I usually start work around 9, 10 a.m., and I work until about 5 or 6. That is typically how my work days go. 2021, I worked maybe once or twice a week because I couldn't sit still. I couldn't focus. I would cry anytime I had to start planning or organizing or even trying to just find a direction I wanted to go in. I got so overwhelmed that I would just sit down and cry because I didn't know what to do. Like, it's just there were all these ideas. And if you are neurodivergent, you're going to understand when I say that it was just like a hive. It was just bees buzzing the entire time. I couldn't get my thoughts. I couldn't figure out my thoughts. I got so overwhelmed from all the thoughts and all the ideas and all the things I needed to execute that I just froze. I just panicked, I froze, and I didn't do anything. And towards the end of 2021, I had started therapy. I was on antidepressants, and my husband had been diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, but he was re-diagnosed with adult ADHD. He got diagnosed first with adult ADHD and he got medication to help with his ADHD, and his productivity got so much better. And in his brain, he was able to focus because, we had a lot of days where it's like, look, I can't get motivated. I can't focus. Like, I have all these thoughts and I can't get them down. And there's too many thoughts and I'm overwhelmed. So he was medicated, he had ADHD, and he started noticing, like, hey, you're multitasking a lot. You're bouncing around from thing to thing. You get excited about this, then you burn out really quick, and then you don't focus on it again. Or it'd be the opposite. And I would bounce around all these ideas, but then I wouldn't pick one and flush it out. Or I would get in my head too much about perfecting it so that I wouldn't even do it. Good luck trying to get me to use a planner back then because I just couldn't even. I'm like, well, some days I don't want to work on that. I want to work on this. And that's why I was getting to the point of only having 1 or 2 work days out of the week. And those work days weren't good. Like, I would probably work for 12 hours straight and be exhausted and burn out. And that's why I could only handle 1 to 2 days out of the week because I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't even taking care of my mental health at that point. I was a mess. So 2022 came around and I was just like, okay, we need to figure out what's going on here because I can't keep living like this. I couldn't. I was so severely depressed because I was so overwhelmed with my thoughts that my ADHD just magnified everything else because I was so overwhelmed with my brain and my thoughts and frustrated that my brain couldn't do what everyone else's could do. And it was so, you don't realize that that's what neurodivergence is. And I'm getting choked up because I hate that I did that to myself. I hate that I didn't acknowledge, like, oh my God, I have a learning disability. My brain doesn't work like everyone else's. When, you grow up being told that, you're just hyper, you don't pay attention, you're inattentive, when it's like, oh no, it was actually something serious and I could have gotten help for that. The way my mom explained it to me when I was younger growing up, because she saw some signs, but she wasn't sure if it was ADHD. And so she would always tell me, I really think you have adult ADHD, but don't, if it's not bothering you now, that's fine. And when she said that, I was still a dog walker. I was still highly active. And so I was out, and that was helpful for my ADHD. But, sitting at a desk, not going outside, not walking 15,000 steps a day, going to doing maybe 5,000 steps a day, that will change things. That changes your physiology. That changes how your brain operates because it's a completely different channel. And I was just like, I'm not cut out for this. Like, what do I do? Do I go back to dog walking? I don't want to go back to dog walking. And so I was diagnosed with ADHD. It took a while to figure out what medication worked out for me. I'm very pro medication. If it helps you, you're able to be productive and work and not be a big sad ball, then that is great. And I just had to have this conversation with my psychiatrist because I have recently been apprehensive about taking my ADHD medication. There's still that part of me that is like, no, I can work through this. I don't need it. I'm not weak. I don't need it. I can work through it. I can train my brain. I, take all these supplements. I've changed my diets to help my brain work better, but the medication works for a reason. So I told her I've been struggling with taking it because it's like I feel like I don't need it. And then it's like the days I do take it, I'm like, wow, it helped. Um, and so she had to have a conversation with me, which is why I'm even doing this episode, because I was just like, huh, well, thank you. So I know that doesn't explain anything, and I'll explain that to you. Before I dive into the whole ADHD thing, I do want to add the PMDD factor. So, for those of you that don't know what PMDD is, it stands for premenstrual dysphoria disorder. It just simply means that my cycles are a lot on me. And not just the physical aspect. The physical aspect isn't the hardest part for me because that only lasts like 2 days for me. It's the mental aspect of it. It's anyone that has a uterus that has ADHD. I feel like that makes more sense. So, those of us that have a uterus that have ADHD, we are much more likely and prone to developing PMDD. I think I noticed I had PMDD probably middle of 2021 or so, because I started noticing that my very, very deep, deep, deep sad down days, like very bad down days, coincided with my cycle. And that's not to say that I wasn't struggling with depression and anxiety through that, because I was, but it's, if you talk to anybody that has PMDD, they will tell you that, and I'm sure it's different for other people, but for me, a week before my cycle starts, it will be like someone just flipped a switch, pulled the rug out underneath me. Whoa, different person, different brain, all of a sudden, like, and I try to prepare for it. I have gotten much better at tracking my cycle and noticing when there is a shift. So or if you are someone that has periods and you have a cycle, definitely start looking into that if you notice that change for you. I feel like I need to do a whole episode on that. But that really affected my productivity and my brain because that week before my cycle would start, I like to call that hell week, because I'd noticed brain fog. My ADHD medication wouldn't do what it was doing for me. I would be very weepy, very emotionally tender. My husband would look at me a certain way and I would just break down crying. I would get so overwhelmed with my schedule. Just all these things that it's like I could handle them any other week of the month, but that week it was like I was a different person. I just couldn't do it no matter how hard I pushed myself, no matter how hard I tried to schedule things out. I took my ADHD medication like I should have. I even upped the dose during then. Nothing. It doesn't make a difference when I am going through that week. And I finally noticed like, okay, this really is PMDD and it does link into my ADHD where what the hell do I do? It's just, I can't afford to take a week off work and I can't afford to have these back-to-back unproductive days when I'm trying to do what I'm doing. It was just to the point where it was so, so bad. And I would spend, 3 days in bed just sad because it was a lot. And it was a really dark place to be in. And so I finally connected with a psychiatrist and we finally have me on supplements. I got off of my antidepressant because the one I was on wasn't working for me. And we're finally fine tuning it so that it's not as bad for me. And I think this last cycle I just had in March, I noticed a change. And your partner is going to be, depending on how your communication is, your partner is going to be the best way for you to see and track. So Josh and I are very connected. Our communication's very open. And I have told him, like, hey, you have free reign to tell me when you notice a change in me because I need to tell my doctor. And so he had pointed out when I wasn't taking my ADHD medication, he's like, why aren't you taking that? That's supposed to help you. It helps you. And I was so resistant to it because I was like, maybe I don't have ADHD. Maybe I've been overthinking it. Maybe it's hormones. Maybe it's, it's all these other things. But I didn't want to accept that I had ADHD because it's not as bad as some people, but it still made doing things daunting and debilitating for me. And when he would, say like, look, you got to take your medication. It helps you. I would take it. And then 20, 30 minutes later, I'd go walk into his office and I'd just be like, you were right. Thank you for telling me to take that. And he's like, did it work? And I'm always like, yes. And I don't realize it in the moment, but it's all these thoughts, all these thoughts, all these thoughts. And then it goes, oh, okay, these thoughts are here, but I don't need to focus on all of them. It just makes it so that I can think. And I forget that actually is what ADHD is. I don't know why I have a hard time with that or why I'm so mean to myself about it. So don't do what I've been doing. But with that, so I finally have figured out a system with my psychiatrist of, okay, this is what we can start doing. And then we'll keep adjusting and adjusting. And I highly suggest if you can afford it with your health insurance, work with a psychiatrist. It is the best decision I ever made, because they will advocate and push for you to get more blood work, which will help give you more answers. I found out that I have pernicious anemia, which is an autoimmune disorder. Never would have known because my primary care provider didn't test certain levels. They didn't check like my iron and stuff, so they wouldn't have known. But I had said everything I had been experiencing to my psychiatrist, and she was just like, all right, we're doing blood work. And it turns out I have anemia. So that's fun. It means my body does not store and hold on to iron like it should, which affects my energy levels. So that part is to say that on top of, taking care of your mental health, on top of taking care of learning disabilities and all these other things, don't ever think to, not rule out health things. Get the blood work if you can get the blood work. Do the testing if you can do the testing. Get answers for yourself, because what are we doing for these dog parents and their dogs? What are we doing? We're helping them get more answers, but we don't give ourselves that kindness. We don't get answers for ourselves. And I think that's just like wow, that says a lot. And in order for us to help, I'm going to say this all the time, but in order for us to help others, we need to help ourselves first. And I feel like so many of the guests I've had on the podcast are like, you got to put your mask on first. But it's like, I don't know. I never think to do that for myself. I've never given myself that kindness. And now that I've started doing that, it's opened my eyes to seeing how everyone else doesn't do that. And so that is why I'm sharing this, because even if it helps one more person go, you know what, I've always wondered if I had ADHD, or hey, maybe I do have PMDD, maybe I have endometriosis. Like the list could go on and on, but until you take the effort in finding it out, you're never going to know. And you deserve to have those answers so that you can better help yourself. I don't know where I wanted to go with that. But so advocate for yourself. That's my main thing with that. With all that background on me and how I got here and got an ADHD diagnosis, how does that affect my business? Well, now that I know how my brain works, I know how to set myself up for work. I literally just learned that this year, January 2023. I just started executing that because, you can see so many things on TikTok, you follow so many accounts, but until you start implementing these things in your life, it's not going to make a difference. So, for those of you that are on YouTube watching right now, I'm going to turn my monitor so you guys can see my whiteboard behind me. And if you're listening right now, please feel free to go over to YouTube later on and go check this out. I will eventually, when this episode comes out, I'll make a social media post of my whiteboard so you guys can kind of see how that looks. But if you haven't read The One Thing by Gary Keller, I highly recommend it. It's not a big read. I'll show you how big the book is if you're watching on YouTube, but it's not a very big book. I think there are maybe 200 something pages, not even. Really light read, lots of graphics and examples. But that was the book for me that helped me figure out, because with my bees in my brain, ADHD, I had a hard time figuring out what to focus on, what to work on each day. What was my objective? I couldn't even get that going. Planning and looking to the future, setting goals, I never have done that. Ever. And Josh is someone that likes to set goals. And so January this year, he was like, okay, so what are your goals for the year? And I just started sobbing because I couldn't plan. I sat down in front of my whiteboard before I had that, and I just didn't know where to start. I couldn't start. So he listened to the audiobook of The One Thing, and he was like, I really think it would help you. And I like audiobooks, but I don't think I take them in as well. So I have to physically read it. And I just like books. I love reading. So I read that and I was just like, you're right. I did need that, and it totally helped. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, then I'm going to break down my whiteboard for you. So take this here with me. Okay, so I have my whiteboard broken down into, usually I have 4 sections, but I've changed it to 5 sections because I like seeing what I have the next week. So I have one section that is my year goals, and then I have quarterly, and then I have this week, next week, and today. So how I have this set up, and this is kind of something I did learn from reading The One Thing, is in order to figure out what I work on today, I kind of have to funnel my goals out so that I am at least in some shape or form every day working towards my goal. Now, it doesn't always look the same. Sometimes, I wake up and I feel like shit and I don't want to work. So some days I move things around when I can, give myself a mental health day, and then do the work on the day that I typically have off. Like I switch my days around if I can. There's caveats with that. We'll go into that. So I have my year goals, and that gets broken down into my quarterly goals, which then gets broken down into what I need to do this week. And then for my next week, I like to know what to expect next week, just because I like to see. So goals I have for the year, those get, what do I need to accomplish this quarter in order to meet some of these yearly goals. And so I have that pulled down. So for example, my year goal I had was to pivot woof culture to focus more on mental health, start a podcast, and start a YouTube. So my goals for this quarter were to come up with the podcast name, come up with a tagline, come up with 6 topics, and how many guest episodes I wanted scheduled. You see all these things crossed off, I got them done. I didn't get them done by looking at my quarterly goals every day, though. So from the quarterly goals, I would put down into what I needed to do this week. So when I was first getting started, I just gave myself the goals of, okay, you need to come up with the name and the tagline and at least 6 ideas for 6 episodes. So I have an idea to jump off of. And so then from this week, it would funnel to today. And so it would break down into, okay, what do I need to just do today? And back in January, I had a goal of just okay, I need to come up with a name. It took me a while to come up with a name, actually. So that's how that works. And with my year goals, I don't have just my business goals. I have my personal goals too. So under personal goals, for example, I have find a therapist, find a psychiatrist, and those are both crossed off because I already did that and I'm very proud of myself. But some other ones are go camping twice this year, go to X amount of comedy shows. So keep your goals, don't do just business because you need to focus on the play. You need to give yourself play and your days off. And it's so rewarding to cross off when you do one of those things. I was so excited when I crossed off. I did find a psychiatrist. I did find a therapist, because those are big things and we deserve the pat on the back. So that's how I use that whiteboard. So essentially, I just funnel my day every day. That way, I am chipping away slowly at what I want to accomplish this year, what I need to accomplish this quarter. And it filters into, okay, what do I just do this week? Okay, so I have these things this week. Okay, so what do I just do today? And for my daily tasks, I maybe pull 3 or 4 things that I know I can handle in a day, and then I do them. And this whiteboard helps me plan out my week. So, for example, I had on my quarterly goals to get at least 5 guest episodes scheduled. I got that done before the quarter ended. I still have another week and a half before the quarter ends, but I got that done. But I got that done over months. And I got that done over months because I had it scheduled out at least once a week. So that's kind of how I break that down. And I hope that helps. I hope I explained that well, and I hope you guys understand what the heck I'm saying with that. Because I feel like something with ADHD is that, at least for me, I would look at the big picture every time and get overwhelmed. Or I would look at the end goal and not know where to start. And so for me, having the visual of, okay, what's my end goal? Okay, now how do I work towards that? And what do I do every day? Ever since I got that whiteboard and started doing that, that has helped me so much. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. There are some days I look at my whiteboard and everything looks daunting. And I'm just I don't want to focus on anything. And those are the days where I go, okay, can I give myself a longer morning? Can I give myself an easier task to do today so I can do some harder stuff tomorrow when I'm feeling more up for it? Because if I don't do that to myself, then I'm just going to frustrate myself more. And if I didn't use that system, I make custom logos for dog trainers. I make my designs for Woof Culture. I run Woof Culture. I do the podcast. I do all the editing for the podcast. I also own a fixer-upper. And so I'm always working on my house. And I have a cat and a dog who are both very young and need my attention. So I wouldn't be able to do all those things without running myself into the ground if I didn't find a system to at least organize my work brain better, because that does trickle on into the rest of my life. Because work is the one thing for me that has always been chaotic. And I always think oh, I can move it around. But having that system in place has helped me immensely with just figuring out what I need to do and when I can delegate tasks out. I hope that makes any sense. If you have questions about books to read or how I executed the whiteboard, how I got that done, let me know. I would love to dive into that stuff because I love getting nerdy with organizing with those things. It's very similar to, a lot of therapists and psychiatrists will recommend for those of us that are neurodivergent to do brain dumps. That's essentially what it is. I'm categorizing and organizing and funneling down to what's most important and what do I need to work on today. It's essentially what that is. It's just more organized, just a brain dump. So using my whiteboard, actually taking my ADHD medication has helped. I usually have a lot of fidget spinners on my desk, or I'll play with my AirPods while I'm in a meeting. But I have ways of keeping myself focused while I'm talking in meetings and stuff like that. Taking more breaks during work, that is something I never did. I make a point of I accomplish a task, I go take a break. I accomplish a task, I go take a break. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to be sitting at my desk for 5 or 6 hours without eating, drinking, or going to the bathroom because I will hyper focus that hard. Another way I have really tried to set not just myself, but my husband and I both up for success with work because we are both ADHD is prepping meals and foods as much as possible. I know that sounds so annoying, but when you have a long work day with your partner and you both work from home, last thing you want to do is go in the kitchen and cook dinner. One of you will try to pass it off to the other or say, let's just get Taco Bell tonight. That was us all of 2021. Not ashamed to admit it. I will be the first person to go get Taco Bell if it is easier than making dinner. So when I say prepping, I'm not saying like, prep all these meals in advance and, take your whole Sunday to do that. I don't do that kind of prepping. I more so give myself things that are easy to grab, easy to throw together, and just setting myself up in the best way possible. So I know a lot of people will use like HelloFresh or Home Chef or whatever those meal plans are, but that gets expensive over time, especially on a dog training salary, dog walking salary. It's not salary, but income. It's not, especially if you live somewhere expensive, you have kids, you have mortgage. That's a lot. You can't really, paying however much a month to have these pre-cut ingredients just so you don't have to pre-cut them in inflation in this economy. Like I could not rationalize that. I love being as cheap as possible and saving as much money as possible. I think that's comes from me growing up with a single mother. I love a bargain and I love saving money. So a habit I've developed that I started doing so Josh and I do have a habit of planning out our meals for the week. That's how we grocery shop. That's how we save money so that we're not wasting money. We're not wasting food. So we have a spreadsheet doc, and every Saturday evening or like Sunday, sometimes Mondays, it depends on when we can have the bandwidth to do it. But we will sit down together and we will say, okay, hey, what meals do you want for dinners this week? What meals do you want for lunches this week? And we'll plan that out. If we pull from a cookbook, we'll make sure we get all the ingredients. If we pull from, a website online, we'll make sure we have all the ingredients and have a link in the spreadsheet so that when it's time to make that, we'll have that listed. And then we'll do all the grocery shopping. Half the time we will get half of our groceries from a cheaper grocery store like Grocery Outlet or Trader Joe's, and then we'll order the other half online so that we just go pick it up. Easy, I will always take the easy way when I can. So if I don't have to go into the store and grocery shop and someone else can do it for me, fuck yeah, I will do it. So then I get the groceries home. I look at the meals and recipes we have planned for the week. If anything calls for like a cup of chopped onions, 3 things of, minced garlic, I will chop the amounts I need for those meals and just have them in bags and Tupperwares in the fridge so that I can just pull them, dump things, and go. Oh my God. I was like, I'm my own Hello Fresh. I'm my own Hello Mandy. But it does make a difference. It helps. And I know it's like, oh my God, girl, you're wanting me to like go in my kitchen and chop veggies and do that. Make it a thing. Make it a family thing if you want. Like, Josh and I will like, okay, today's prep day. Let's cut everything, get it in the Tupperware, and then let's go walk the dog at the park. Like it's not something I spend the entire day doing. I jam it out in a couple hours, then it's done and I can rest. And I know that I'm going to have an easier week because it's already prepped. Lunches, I try to grab things that are quick to throw together. So I grew up in a primarily Asian household. My mom and my grandmother were Filipino. So I love rice. I love Spam. I love seaweed. I love soy sauce. And so all the time, like my go-to meals, I cook a big thing of brown rice in the Instant Pot. I use it for the week. I make stir fry I make fried rice, I make musubi, I make, one of my quick, easy go-to breakfasts is just brown rice, a little seaweed, and an egg cooked in soy sauce. Protein, grains, there you go. Like, that's how easy I set myself up. I like to have things that I just dump, mix, cook, go. And, with ADHD and neurodivergence, sometimes we forget to feed ourselves or we go for things that aren't as nutrient dense. And we do need to eat for our brains because if we're not eating and supplying our brains with the nutrients we need, it doesn't matter if we take our medication and if we're setting our schedule if we don't have brain power because we're not feeding our brains. So that is something I noticed big time with Josh. He was going for the easier meals, but I was just like, dude, like, you have not eaten a vegetable today. You have not eaten any fruit. And you're telling me you feel foggy and tired. I wonder why. And so I have just gotten into the habit of, hey, I'm making lunch. Do you want some? And he almost always says yes because I have gotten in the habit of making quick, easy, healthy meals and I hide the vegetables in them. So, making a quick veggie chow mein or a quick little stir fry, fried rice, just dump the veggies in there with seasoning and there you go. You got a pretty nutrient dense meal and you're not going to be hungry until dinner. You're going to be able to work, you're going to be able to have the brain power and you're not going to feel crappy. Like one of my easiest lunchtime hacks. And I'm sharing this because for those of us that are neurodivergent and just don't have the time to plan and prep and it's so hard, oh my God, executive dysfunction. Don't even get me, like, the worst thing for me is going into the kitchen and going, I'm hungry, I can't decide on what to eat. And all these textures don't sound appeasing to me. But if I have things that are already, I know I can throw them together, I'll eat it because it's just like, okay, it's easy. One of my go-tos for a while is I get like, it's not cup of noodles, it's like a fancier brand, but it's more or less like instant ramen. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you are dressing it up and loading it up. And what I mean by that is like, what I do is I'll get a packet from the grocery store of cabbage if I don't feel like cutting up cabbage or like the broccoli slaw, get a bag of that. You just need a handful, fry it up in the pan, get it hot, cook it in some soy sauce and some oil with a little bit of garlic powder, fry up a egg over easy really quick in the skillet, cook it in some soy sauce and olive oil, put that on top of your ramen. You have protein and veggies in your ramen. That is a meal that will keep you filled. Yes, you had instant ramen for lunch, but you also added all these veggies in there, which is going to give you brain power and it's not going to just, go right through you. It's going to give you nutrients. So that's kind of how I hack meal planning portion so that I can work. So, that's a long way to get here of just talking about medication and diet and planning. But I think it's important to go over that so that you really understand. I'm not one of those people that's going to be like, oh, I have ADHD. I take medication and I'm able to work. That's not the case. I have all these steps that help set me up. And even then, I still have shit days where I don't want to work and I can't predict them or plan for them, but I have enough systems in place that I've learned to adjust and move things around when I can. So with all the work things, so with the medication background and with the food and with the diet and with the planning, that is how I am able to function as an adult with ADHD and PMDD and be successful and have, two businesses with my husband and be able to run a business with my spouse who I have been with since 2014. So we've been together 9 years, married for 6, and we have 2 successful businesses together, 3 if you count our old dog walking and training business. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't take care of ourselves and we didn't, it's interesting that there isn't an easy answer for how I shut myself up. It's just I have finally learned to be nice to myself, understand my brain and what I need in order for my brain to work. And I'm still figuring it out. I'll have days where I wake up and I'm in a piss mood and I need to figure out a way to change that. So I think it's just a matter of figuring out your brain. And it doesn't always take this is the conversation I had with my psychiatrist that led to this podcast episode being created, is that I told her I was having a hard time taking my medication because I just don't feel like I officially have ADHD, and like my brain doesn't want to work around my cycle, and maybe that's just the PMDD. But she's like, you wouldn't have one without the other, and she was like, I just wish that, it wasn't the diagnosis. There wasn't a label, and it was just more, this is how your brain works. This is why it works this way. And here's what we can do to help balance out your brain so that you can function, you can be productive and not feel like the weight of the world is crushing you. And when she said that, I was just like, it was just like a little like tuner in my head just went, whoa. And I had that connection of dog training, because so many times, people want to throw a label on a dog that is experiencing behavior stuff when it's like, we just need to get to the root of the behavior. We don't need to place labels. I don't know if like the label has been weird for me. It's not that I love being able to admit that I am neurodivergent and I operate differently, because I don't think I'd be able to be as creative as I am if I wasn't. But for some reason, I didn't look at I was looking more at the label. I wasn't looking at the how my brain works. And once she said that, I was just like, well, that is a good point, because that relates so hard to dog training. And I feel like whenever those connections get made, it clicks a little bit better for me. I don't know why. It's just how it works for me. I don't know. So I hope that this has been a little insightful. I hope that you're like, oh my God, I don't care to know all this about you, Mandy. But I think it helps give you a better of understanding of kind of, just because you're neurodivergent, just because, you may have a disability, you may get overwhelmed, have depression, have anxiety, whatever it is, you can still do things. And it's just figuring out a way that works best for you and your brain and not overwhelming yourself. Again, that is why I am starting this podcast, is because I want us to feel less alone in this journey. As someone that felt so alone in their dog training journey when I first started, I feel like between 2016 to 2018 were so rough for me as a dog trainer. I constantly got in my own head and beat myself up, and I wasn't aware I was neurodivergent then. Even I just thought I was a bitch with anxiety and depression, not that I like actually had a hard time thinking and concentrating and getting all my thoughts out. So all of that is to say that just, you can do it. You absolutely can. If my hot mess can get it together and somehow have successful businesses and still love what I do and wake up excited about what I do, you absolutely can do it. And you are absolutely in the right profession. Don't think that you aren't. There's a reason that you wanted to do this. I was so passionate about dog training and dogs, and I think I lost that, at least the passion to do the training, primarily because I was overwhelmed with my brain and I couldn't organize my thoughts. And I just was like, I need to go a more creative route, because that's always what I wanted to do anyway. I love being more creative than instructing and teaching. And so I veered off to still keep a toe within dog training, but in a different light. And I think that is always another great option. If, you're just like, I really love this, but I want to do something different with it. You can and you should, because we need different things going on. There is nothing wrong with specializing in something that you feel more passionate about and narrowing your education down for that. Do it. If you just feel like, this is more my thing and you feel it in here, do it. Just go for it. One of the best pieces of advice my aunt-in-law, Veronica, has ever given me is, don't wait for it to be perfect. Just do it. And, if I would have waited for this podcast to be perfect, getting the perfect logo, get the perfect, all this, it wouldn't have happened. And it just took a matter of me just starting, just doing it. So if you are, debating whether you need help, whether you need to start delegating, need help getting organized, maybe you've been debating whether you are neurodivergent and you feel like you need an official diagnosis, whatever it is you have been thinking about, take the small step. Even just doing the research, going on Google, checking out a website. Give yourself small little things to do. Break it into, like we approach dog training and behavior, break it down in a way so it's easy for you to execute and digest and get it done. That is my biggest piece of advice. That is the only reason I am able to do all of this right now. And again, not every day is perfect. I have some shit days where I wake up and I am miserable and cranky and don't want to do any work. And when that happens, if I don't have a meeting or a recording or an appointment, I'll move things around if I can. And there's nothing wrong with saying you need more time on something, or, oh, hey, I'm a little behind on this, or actually, I'm going to move this around. Would you mind scheduling? It depends on the situation, but there is never anything wrong with advocating for yourself. And I hope you know that. Like, don't do things that are detrimental to your mental health. And that's not to say don't do the hard things, because you can do them. It's just setting yourself up in the best way possible. So before I end here, I'm going to go back to the PMDD stuff. So setting myself up, I have learned now that I have tracked my cycle enough. That week before my period, I do not schedule hard things. I do not give myself hard tasks because I know where I might be mentally within that window. And if I'm doing good, I will do those hard things. But I like to schedule things in a way so that I am setting myself up. I'm not, looking at my calendar and going, oh my God, I have 3 different doctor's appointments in 1 week. That is a lot. I never do that. That is something else that I do. I don't schedule tons of shit during 1 week. If I am scheduling a doctor's appointment, I am doing 1 doctor's appointment that week. I will not give myself 2 or 3 more appointments. That is overstimulating, overwhelming, and so much. It's such a disruption in my schedule. I can't do that to myself. So if I have doctor's appointments, it's 1 a week. If I have podcast recordings, that is 2 or 3 per week. That is the max I can handle. And on the days that I do my podcast recordings, I don't give myself other work. I don't do logo work. I don't do social media planning. I don't do that. I have my days where I plan my things. Because when I'm doing interviews and meetings, I am having to talk and interact, and it's exhausting having to do that. I love doing it. I love talking, clearly, but it's exhausting to do every day, and I can't do it every day. And I can't switch tunes and go, okay, I'm going to, record all these episodes really quick and do some editing, which takes me half the day. And then I'm going to go work on a logo. I can't do that. That's exhausting. So balance your schedule out in that way if you can, so that you're working on certain things these days and you're working on certain things these days, and do not overlap them. Give yourself those breaks between those things so that you're not constantly switching between different channels. You know what I mean? Okay. Well, then if you liked this episode, I'm very surprised. I'm grateful that people want to know more about me and why I'm doing this and how I've become successful over the last 4 years doing this as somebody with ADHD and PMDD and autoimmune disorder now, apparently. It's doable, and you absolutely can do this. If I can do this, you totally can do this. Absolutely.